Don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe, and do consider supporting the channel via PayPal or Patreon. You'll find the links in the video description. It's the final of the Chessable Masters. Ding Liren faces Rameshbabu Praggnanandhaa. 2 sets of 4 games played over 2 days. And then I'm going to show you game 1 of the first day. So Praggnanandhaa with white. Now the funny thing is, he finished his match against Giri at 2 AM in Chennai time. And he actually had a school exam at 8:45 in the morning. So he had to get enough sleep. He also had to do his prep. And then, after that, he faced Ding. So, not an easy schedule for Pragg. And he's facing Ding, who's the number 2 in the world. So, it's a Queen's Gambit exchange variation. And really interesting to see how both players handle this. So h6 has come into fashion. This was a favourite of Michael Adams, actually, or still is a favourite of Michael Adams. Normally, you were told never move that h-pawn, but there's a good reason for it, and let's find out why. So rook e8 and castles, and knight d7. So what black is aiming to do is to play knight h5 and exchange off these bishops. And if the queen is on c2, then you need to have h6 there. But in any case, it's a useful move. And the old plan that Botvinnik and after him Kasparov and others played was f3 and a patient build-up. Moves like this, and perhaps putting the rook on e1 and playing for e4, which can be very dangerous. Kind of a slow burn, central kingside attack. But over the past couple of years, it's been discovered that b5 is an excellent response to this. So for example, Carlsen Firuzja from 2020 went like this. And black gains space with b4 and then breaks with c5. So this is kind of the new way of playing this. And to counter that, a lot of players now are playing a4, which a few years ago you would never dream of playing this move. The kind of traditional, another way of playing for white is to play rook b1, b4 and b5 in the minority attack. And you'd think a4, that looks really strange. You know, weakens this square. But the thing is, if a5, then later on, after white plays f3 and c4, then, you know, black normally tries to counter with c5, but the b5 square is weaker. So that's the problem with a5. You know, if you could play that knight magically to b4, that would be a fine thing. But not possible. So a4 is very modern way of playing. Ding continues with his plan of knight h5. So this is all about exchanging bishops. If the bishop comes back to g3, and once you eliminate knight for bishop, black should be absolutely fine. So therefore, bishop takes bishop, queen takes. And this just gives black a little bit more freedom to maneuver. I mean, this is such a common exchange that black goes for in so many variations of the Queen's Gambit, the Lasker variation, the Tartakova, and several others as well. So it just gives black more freedom to maneuver. a5. So Pragg makes use of this advanced a-pawn. And here we've seen some recent games that have gone a6. For example, Caruana against Firuzja went like this. Well, you know, a tight game, tight maneuvering, but basically, you know, Firuzja was okay there. But instead of playing a6, Ding didn't bother. He just played knight f8. So this is the standard sort of maneuver to bring this knight, well, perhaps later on to e6, but basically just to free this bishop. And now knight c1. So, white may be trying to maneuver this here. Might just be putting the knight out of the way and eventually, making moves like this and bringing the rook over. Still perhaps going for e4 much later on, but it's difficult to achieve. And here queen g5 looks quite inviting, as Firuzja did. That's certainly an interesting option to try and generate a little bit of play on the king side. But Ding, super solid, just brought the knight back into the middle. It's on a good square. Knight b3. And now black has a few tempting options. For example, bishop g4. Now f3 not possible because of queen takes. So queen there, and then bishop h5. This little maneuver going around the houses, it's actually very decent for black. You play bishop g6, exchange off that nice bishop, and again it sort of frees black's pieces a little bit there. Another way to go is knight e6. I quite like this. And knight g5, perhaps looking to sink one of these knights into e4, also very attractive. But Ding just kept his options open, played rook b8. That's really interesting. And he just sought to play b6 and then went for c5. So again, a very new way of playing. Normally black would never touch those queenside pawns in this line. But it seems absolutely fine. Just pushing c5. And here, Pragg, I think, makes an error of judgment. He played knight f3, allowing c4, and suddenly black had this sort of pawn steamroller, and it's not winning or anything, but it's just a very pleasant initiative. If we go back here, I think this was the moment where Pragg had to switch on. And white is still absolutely fine. For example, bishop b5. So just occupying that square. And I don't think there's any real danger for white in this position at all. I think it's just about equal. I mean, black can also exchange here, play bishop d7. It's, well, you can see it's an almost symmetrical pawn structure. Both sides have reasonable places for the pieces. It's level, basically. But that's what white should be doing. Instead, as I said, knight f3 allows black to push this majority, and now it's getting very tricky. And, in rapid play, you don't have time to sort of look at the niceties of this position, find some tricky way to slow down those pawns. It's just a wonderful initiative for black. b4. And here Pragg just dropped with knight e2, and I felt that was too obliging. Knight a4 is a tricky move. Perhaps looking to come in here, and after this exchange, well, the knight won't get to c5. But even this is interesting. Okay, black is obviously better. This is a protected pawn. Protected passed pawn, but f3 shuts out the knight. Bring the king to d3. Very hard to see how black is actually making a breakthrough there. Let's go back. So knight e2, too obliging. Rook a8, good move, just preventing any counterplay on the a file. And later on, black will make a breakthrough. Okay, there's a bit of a demonstration here from white's pieces, but actually black can handle this very easily. Here the easiest is simply to exchange and just go b3 and potentially rook a2, potentially c3. But it's interesting, Ding kept wanting to complicate. Knight e4. And here, actually, Pragg missed a tactic. He could have taken on a8 and played knight to take c4. So if that's taken, suddenly white is back in the game, having won a pawn. Now, it's not that simple. This is a good move. And then you take here. So now this knight is defended. Queen g4, very tricky. Threatening mate. And actually, if g6, then the strange tactics here. Queen takes knight and a knight fork. So actually black has to play f5. And then rook d8. It's a very unclear position, actually. It's very tricky indeed. I feel, if Pragg had sort of been more awake, he almost sort of sleepwalked into this position and sleepwalked into a bad position. I think normally, tactically, he's so alert. I think, he'd be kicking himself afterwards for not spotting that tactic. Instead, he played knight g3, and now black is back on track. Those knights look beautiful. And white's knights aren't really doing anything. And black just secures the central position. Queen behind the pawn. This should be winning now. It's interesting at every turn how Ding just squeezed a little more out of the position. That little threat to the queen allowed the knight to jump into this fantastic position. And there's not a lot that white can do now. b3. Okay, the king comes off the back rank. You never know, it might help, but actually c3 is winning straight away. So after this take, now you don't play b3, which could still get a bit tricky, because the queen needs to guard this and guard that, but instead knight takes c3, and now the pawn and knight can basically finish on their own because the knight is covering this square. One last little trick from Pragg. Rook a3. Here's the trick. If b2, rook b3. If that's taken, then the queen comes in. And if b1, queen takes b1. And white is winning. And after rook b3, if rook takes, then this ends in a draw by perpetual check. Standard drawing mechanism there. But after rook a3, of course, you don't need to play this. All you need to do is protect that pawn. Nice move, rock solid, so that now rook takes pawn, queen takes, and it doesn't matter that the queen has been dragged away from f7 because the rook defends. Knight d3. And now the pawn just rolls home, and Pragg had to give up the knight. And of course, well, black is just a knight up for only one pawn, so actually this is terribly easy. And to add to Pragg's woes, he was also very short of time. And here Pragg decided enough was enough. He's about to be tied down to the defence of this pawn, perhaps via c2 or perhaps via c6. And that really is the end. What a smooth victory from Ding Liren. I think he showed his class there. In fact, in the second game, he kind of messed up a bit and didn't play terribly well. Pragg hit back, 1-1 after 2 games. Then Ding won the third convincingly. And the fourth, well, Ding steered it to a draw pretty easily. So Ding won the first set, 2.5, 1.5. So that means Pragg needs to win set 2 on day 2 to get to a playoff. It's going to be a tough ask. But Pragg, who knows, after he's had a bit more rest after the day's play and the exam, you never know, he might be able to do it. Remember, this is the Chessable Masters tournament sponsored by Chessable. Do check out my Kalashnikov course, chessable.com. It's on sale at the moment. Thanks for watching. I'll be reporting on day 2 tomorrow.